the men's room for that. No. The guy's got a tie on. You gotta give him points for that.
Did he start recording early?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, we can pause it.
Yep.
Alright, so the case we're going over today is O'Bannon versus NCAA. For the next slide. A little bit about us. My name is Tommy Lavin. I'm a marketing major here at FAU. I personally was really interested in this case because I really think like NIL deals with college athletes is very important because there's a lot of work that goes into the college athletic programs and they don't really have time to work and they need to live somehow, so I think they should get something at least for that. But everybody wants to introduce yourselves.
Alright, I'm Adrian Mendez. I'm a management major and I'm focusing on entrepreneurship.
Hi, my name is Danny Allam. I'm a general studies major, minoring in health administration. The reason why I'm taking this course is like to learn how intellectual property works, about the different laws and stuff like that, and I'm interested in this class in general.
My name is Jeffrey Saint-Vil, political science major. This case is pretty interesting to me. I play games. I actually knew about this team. I just didn't know about that Ed O'Bannon was the one that caused this whole NIL situation, so it was a pretty cool thing to learn.
And I'm Spencer. I'm a management major, and I honestly still don't know much about basketball.
Alright. So, brief overview of this case before we really start diving into the details. This case just revolves around NIL deals, so that's name, image, and likeness of college athletes. That's essentially what they're promoting when they go out on the field or the court. And if they put in all this work to really promote themselves, that's what I said earlier, should really be able to get something from that. And this really set the stage for any future reform for this issue. It is still a very ongoing situation right now. And really the main act in this case is the Sherman Act, which prohibits the monopolies and market competition, stuff like that. And that's essentially why we're in court here today, because a college basketball video game used O'Bannon in their game and didn't compensate him for anything, and he heard about it through his friends and was not too happy about it. So yeah. And our thesis here, we are arguing that college athletes should receive some sort of compensation for the use of their name, image, or likeness when it's used without their consent. And I threw a little monopoly man up there because, you know, we don't want those big monopolies being unable to have too much power over small businesses or individual people with not as much power. So this is so important today too. I listed a few cases, NCAA versus Alston, many class action lawsuits, and Tennessee and Virginia also have a lawsuit against the NCAA. So it's really just an ongoing issue with a lot of different people with NIL deals and stuff like that. But yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
So Tommy basically covered a lot of what was going to be said in this, just about the overall purpose. It's just inform everybody about the significance that this case had on the copyright and IP protection. And I just wanted to give a brief overview of what we'll be covering, and it's IP protection when dealing with compensation for athletes in their organization, NIL, name, image, and likeness of student athletes in the NCAA, AntiTrust laws, intellectual property rights being infringed upon, right of publicity laws being infringed upon, and just the overall outcome of the case. Okay, so this is Ed O'Bannon. He was the one that facilitated the lawsuit, or the antitrust, I forgot exactly what it was, but he's the one that facilitated the lawsuit against the NCAA. If you want to learn more about it, he actually did write a book about his whole struggles and everything that he had to go through to make this case go. And like I said, he is significant in IP and copyright history, as he was among the first to fight for his IP rights and won against the NCAA, one of the largest sports organizations in the world. Here we have a few photos of his image and likeness being used. There is the NCAA 09 game, and that is him actually winning the MVP and getting to cut down the net. And as I said, he states that his image and likeness were used to market the video game and in turn gain some type of profit, but him and his teammates were never contacted for their approval in doing so.
So just to go over like the background of the parties, like the background. So NCAA, it like started back. Well, originally it was started back in like 1905, but before that it wasn't called NCAA. It was called the Intercollegiate Athletic Association, and that was founded by Theodore Roosevelt, president, in 1905, and he wanted to create the NCAA to improve upon safety and the unified rules. And also, it became popular, the college football, because of like, it grew in popularity, but there were like doubts because of the common injuries and because of the making of non-student players. And the NCAA today counts more than 1,101 member institutions, and Division I carries the largest sports programs. And Division I, it has two sections. It has Division Football Bowl Subdivision, which offers more scholarships, but it's more competitive to get those scholarships. And it also has Football Champion Subdivision. And in 1920, the NCAA instituted amateurism policies prohibiting player compensation, and enforcement was difficult until 1948, when the Sanity Code restricted financial help depending on the athletic ability. So a little bit about O'Bannon, Tommy already went over it, and former he was a former UCLA player, and they used his picture without his permission. Also that he sued the NCAA under the Sherman Act, the NCAA laws forbidding players from getting paid with the NIL. Even more interesting facts is that facts relating to the allegations in the case, the plaintiffs claim that the NCAA policies forbidding athlete compensation for NIL amounted to an unreasonable trade restriction applied under antitrust statutes. And issues raised in the dispute, the main legal question was whether antitrust law addressed the unreasonable trade barrier generated by NCAA policies restricting player salaries.
So like we said before, the name, image, likeness, and performance are called into play as the NCAA and the respective colleges were using the player's name, image, and likeness to profit billions of dollars every year, but they were not allowing any of the students to profit off of their own name, image, and likeness. And the significance is that O'Bannon was actually used to market the game a bit, because when the game came out, he was on their classic team since he won the championship in '95, and many of his friends said that they were actually buying the game just so they could play with him, and that he was actually one of the best players in the game. And none of him or his teammates were even contacted or given approval to do so. And we have a chart here that actually shows that this is a rough estimate. I don't think that's the exact amount, but it shows that how much the NCAA profited like in 2019. It goes as far back as in the early 2000s, they would still make around $1 billion, and they were using all of that to just further their own program, further their own interests. But if any player was caught using or trying to promote off of their own image and likeness, they would be suspended and they wouldn't be able to play. So I put that figure up there to show you just how much money they're making and how absurd it is that they weren't allowing any of the students to profit at all.
So now going on to the position of both parties. O'Bannon was essentially rooting for, he was rooting against the NCAA's rules on the name, image, and likeness. Again, like they've already said, the name, image, and likeness. And for the likeness, he was rooting for the NCAA's rules on the name, image, and likeness. And for the image, he was rooting against the NCAA's rules on the name, image, and likeness. And for the likeness, he was rooting against the NCAA's rules on the name, image, and likeness. And for the image, he was rooting against the NCAA's rules on the name, image, and likeness. And for the likeness, he was rooting against the NCAA's rules on the name, image, and likeness. And for the likeness, he was rooting against the NCAA's rules on the name, image, and likeness. And for the likeness, he was rooting against the NCAA's rules on the name, image, and likeness. And for the likeness, he was rooting against the NCAA's rules on the name, image, and likeness. And for the likeness, he was rooting against the NCAA's rules on the name, image, and likeness. And for the likeness, he was rooting against the NCAA's rules on the name, image, and pretty much he wanted to be able to monetize on his own, be able to earn money from himself. I mean, essentially going behind the NCAA was essentially going behind his back to market an entire product, an entire industry, an entire sport, using him without him seeing a dime. But the NCAA's defense ruled back to that amateurism policy, which if you look up amateur models, you won't find the results for this case. It pretty much, the amateurism was essential for balance, fan interest. That way it wasn't like professional leagues where it's, oh, this guy's sitting on $500,000 this game, this guy's sitting on $250,000. No, it was meant to just be a game and a sport, and that's one of the strong stances that they took. And of course, larger schools would be able to pay more, smaller schools wouldn't be able to pay as much, payment inequality. It all worked out. When it comes to the laws and regulations applied, I've mainly relied on Section 1 of the Sherman AntiTrust Act, which essentially states like you cannot enter a contract that prohibits trade, prohibits free market activity. And O'Bannon, of course, was against that because he was trying to market. And of course, the contract law, it actually came down to a waiver in their contract. It was like form waiver 08-3A, I think was the exact one. Hey, I put a note there, yeah, 08-3A. And that essentially waived their rights to their name, image, and likeness. And it was built into the standard contract that every player had to sign when they joined into the NCAA. And of course, question for fairness, enforceability, and the courts determined, not so much. There's also the standing precedent from a previous case dealing with the NCAA's broadcasting rights on TV. And it again came down to maintaining a competitive balance. And of course, freedom of speech. That's part of what the NCAA was arguing. Well, we're just using your name. We can say that. We can do that. And that, of course, played into the case. Court's ruling did go in O'Bannon's favor. The NCAA did violate the name, image, and likeness restrictions, violated the Sherman Act. It impeded on fair market competition. They were still arguing the amateurism thing. It really didn't work because, yes, they are amateurs, but that's like saying you're an amateur because you only made it to the first round of PGA. Like, you're there. And they ended up with some like ground rules, like you can have deferred payments of $5,000 a year depending on the school to kind of even out that inequality issue. College athletes or collegiate basketball athletes are allowed to receive scholarships for the full cost of their attendance at the school. And they did keep some of the amateurism. Like it's like a list of what they can and cannot do with their NIL. That's a whole other thing. But yeah. That was leading into more of the amateurism model. It exposed more flaws, like they said earlier. It was founded back in 1910. There were a lot of things that changed since then, and a lot of their main court cases took place back in the 1940s, where you couldn't really broadcast like you can now, so the amateurism thing. And of course, it paved the way for policy that allows college athletes to profit. They can sell their merch, they can sell pictures with their face on them, they can sell jerseys, whatever they want, not necessarily whatever they want, but a lot more than they could before, and earn money off themselves. And of course, circling back to that, it raised questions about disparities between schools with larger programs. It pretty much boiled down to, how do we make this fair? So like if you're at a small school, you can still get paid as much as someone in a big school, and it really strengthened the athlete's right to profit.
So just to go over the ultimate impacts that happened to both parties at the end. So for the NCAA, it was the rule changes implemented. It updated policies applied to the NCAA, had to change its compensation policies after the decision to let athletes receive money from their name, NIL. And this surrounds media appearances like video games, commercial prospects, and also the financial consequences. So for the NCAA and its members, the decision has major financial outcomes, which included schools having more competition to draw elite athletes as their NIL may be beneficial. And also some universities started providing more attractive pay packages as a consequence, which increased financial burden on groups such as the NCAA. And the action also cost the NCAA legal fees and possible damages. And for the plaintiffs, student athletes, it increased the earning potential. The court's decision enabled athletes to more broadly use the NIL rights, therefore creating more new revenue streams. Athletes in highly sought after sports, those shown in the video games or media content, were able to gain more money from these previously restricted sectors in video games, merchandising, and media appearances. And also restoration of NIL rights. The decision preserves student athletes' negotiating power and payability for the use of NIL, including archived materials, licensing video games, speaking engagements. This was a major triumph on the NCAA had before disallowed such pay.
The summary of the case basically talks about how O'Bannon versus NCAA challenged the NCAA rules preventing, college athletes from profiting their name and stuff like that, NIL, like for copyright issues and stuff like that. And another thing is led by O'Bannon and stuff like that. The plaintiffs, they have like an argument, like a statement saying that, the NCAA's restrictive policy and antitrust violations harmed athletes financially, like economically and stuff like that, and the NCAA association as well. Now moving on to the next slide. There's like legal impacts with IP laws. So the O'Bannon case set legal precedents, which recognizing athletes' rights by controlling profit, and NIL, which is like name, image, and likeness, which has something to do with the intellectual property as well. And another point, basically, it gave like broader legal and legislative changes to the NIL as well, to like state and federal levels as well. And now, moving on to the next slide. So basically with O'Bannon, it's like reshaping how financial models of athletics are allowing athletes to monetize their NIL, their name, image, and likeness. And another point is it allows athletes to earn through endorsements by advertising, merchandising, and by creating new revenue by streaming and inaccessible stuff like that. And also talks about traditional amateurism model, which basically talks about promoting schools and athletic associations, like basically at the college level and stuff like that, which has a centered revenue structure as well. And now to the next slide, it talks about strategic impact stakeholders, basically encouraging athletes, to manage and motivate their personal brands, their personal image and stuff like that. It also encourages long-term career and financial prospects of it as well. And it talks about the sports organizations, how brands are seeing athletes as integral brand building and revenue strategies as well. And the ruling has influenced like professional sports and other industries by involving content creators, encouraging like motivating new approaches to IP rights and IP intellectual property rights and stuff like that, and the sports media and in general. And lastly, that's our presentation. Thank you so much.
I have two questions. One is, I forgot, who made the image with the dollar, with the bill on it, with the athletes? On the one slide, it was like a dollar. That one.
Yeah.
Who made that?
I put that on there.
But did you get it or did you make it?
I got it off of, I believe it was, I don't know if it was the New York Times or one of those media outlets.
Let's see if I can try to find it real quick.
It's not like, it's not AI, it's just out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all. And second of all, anybody ever think about talking about Caitlin Clark? Or Angel Reese?
We're only focusing on basketball here.
No. That's all
That is
right.
basketball.
That is basketball. All right. And that's
Well done.
circling back to my opener. I don't know a lot
Thank
about
you.
basketball.
Thank you guys.
Next